Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The driving rain hammered against the windows of Alexander Morgan's penthouse, as if to underscore the rhythm of his arrogance. A millionaire and influential man, he believed that money could buy anything: respect, power, and even the lives of others. That evening, he was reviewing his contracts in his luxurious office, his gaze icy and his smile mocking, when a figure entered. She didn't knock. She didn't ask for anything. She simply stood there, motionless, under the cold light of the hanging lamps. Lila Harper, barely 22, her brown hair slightly tousled, her piercing green eyes staring at Alexander as if she could see directly into his soul. He laughed, a cruel, disdainful sound. "You have no idea who I am," she said in a soft but sharp voice. Alexander leaned over his desk, amused. "Really? And what could you possibly tell me that would interest me, kid?" Lila took a step forward, and each movement seemed to measure time itself. Her lips parted, uttering the words that would change Alexander Morgan's life. "You will die tomorrow." Alexander's laughter echoed through the office, arrogant and senseless. "You dare threaten me? Me, Alexander Morgan?" He stepped toward her, almost to chase her away, almost to play. But Lila didn't back down. She took out a small, thick, black card with just 3 words written in gold letters: "Tomorrow. You." Alexander burst into nervous laughter, certain it was a prank, the whim of a crazy young woman trying to impress. But when he blinked, Lila had vanished. The room was silent, still. Only the sound of rain lingered, but something had changed. The air seemed heavier, the world colder. That night, Alexander slept with that laughter still on his lips, but an unfamiliar shiver ran through him. In his dreams, he saw himself alone, surrounded by moving shadows, and a voice he knew to be real whispered, "Tomorrow, you will pay." The next day, Alexander Morgan's world had ceased to exist. The streets, the people, the business, everything seemed to conspire against him. And the young woman, Lila Harper, was about to reappear, ready to show him that even a millionaire cannot escape the destiny he chooses to ignore. Alexander Morgan woke up in his penthouse, but something was wrong. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, but instead of warmth and comfort, he felt an icy chill throughout his body. Every fiber of his being screamed that Lila Harper's prophecy was no game. He stood up, slightly unsteady, and gazed at the city through the immense bay windows. Manhattan, his city, seemed different. The streets were bustling, yes, but every glance exchanged, every smile flickered by passers-by, struck him as heavy, filled with judgment. As if they all knew something he didn't. At his desk, his usual financial reports were turning into incomprehensible disasters: lost investments, frozen accounts, cancelled contracts. Alexander felt a wave of dizziness rising within him. He was used to controlling everything around him, and yet, today, he was powerless. Every decision seemed to turn against him, every move brought him closer to a fall he couldn't comprehend. He called his assistant, Mark Reynolds, a loyal man for years. But even Mark seemed distant, almost frightened. "Mr. Morgan, perhaps you should rest today," he murmured hesitantly. Mark's usually gentle tone was tinged with anxiety. Alexander frowned. This wasn't normal. As he walked through the streets, he felt a presence, an energy that followed him at every step. People stared at him for no apparent reason, some whispering his name. His heart pounding, he went to the cafe he frequented every morning. Even there, the waiters greeted him with unusual nervousness. Conversations ceased as he entered, and their gazes seemed to weigh upon him like invisible judges. This feeling haunted him into the night. In his sleep, he dreamed of Lila Harper. She floated above a black abyss, motionless, but her eyes pierced him. A voice echoed in his ears, "Tomorrow, you'll understand." Alexander Morgan, the master of numbers and power, finally understood that he was no longer master of his own life. A new, brutal fear had taken hold. And he knew, deep down, that tomorrow would not only be a day of bad luck, but but a day of judgment. The next day, Manhattan seemed distorted to Alexander. Every sound, every movement of the city, took on a menacing air. The world he knew, the one he had controlled for years, was transforming into an unknown territory where he had no hold. He rushed to his office to check his affairs, thinking it was all a bad dream. But the flashing screens reflected a terrifying truth: his safest investments had collapsed, his partners were canceling crucial contracts, and his employees were leaving the company one by one, taking with them information and secrets that no one should have revealed. In a panic, Alexander hired a private investigator, Jason Whitman, an experienced man who had solved numerous financial and criminal mysteries. His goal was clear: to find Lila Harper. But every lead, every witness, seemed to take him further away from her. Some swore they had seen her the day before, others claimed she had never existed. A veil of mystery and incomprehension now enveloped his life. The chaos wasn't confined to business. In the street, Alexander narrowly escaped a car accident. A taxi sped by, as if guided by an invisible force, and grazed his body by mere centimeters. His heart raced, and for the first time in a long time, he felt the fragility of his own existence. Every movement, every breath, seemed to be watched. The world was sending him signs, but Alexander didn't yet understand their meaning. Fear seeped into his veins, icy and persistent. He realized that Lila Harper's prophecy wasn't just an empty threat, it was unfolding before his eyes, inevitable and relentless. That night, he returned to his penthouse in silence, his hands trembling, unable to sleep. In a dream, he saw Lila again, this time motionless atop a building, overlooking the entire city. Her voice echoed in the gloom: "Tomorrow, you won't be able to run away anymore." Alexander Morgan, the master of Manhattan, then understood that everything he thought he possessed, money, power, influence, was worthless in the face of this mysterious destiny. The fateful day was approaching, and he had to confront the reality of his own vulnerability. Alexander Morgan was no longer the same man. The city, once a symbol of his power and absolute control, had become a hostile labyrinth. Every face he encountered seemed to judge his past mistakes. Every sound, every light, made him nervous, as if the whole world were conspiring against him. He left his penthouse to hide in a discreet hotel, under a false identity. But the refuge was only an illusion. Everywhere he went, Alexander felt Lila Harper's shadow. She was like a silent ghost, invisible to others, but omnipresent in his mind. The millionaire, accustomed to imposing his will, found himself confronted with his own limitations. In the solitude of his hotel room, he relived all his years of cruelty, the humiliated employees, the betrayed friends, the families he had ruined with his arrogance. Each memory crashed down on him like an immense weight, and for the first time, he understood the full extent of his misdeeds. An envelope slipped under his bedroom door interrupted his thoughts. Inside was a thick, black card with a phrase engraved in gold letters: "Tomorrow, you will beg." Terror gripped him. This was no longer a game, nor a mere threat, the prophecy was tangible, imminent. Alexander tried to shirk his responsibilities, to make excuses, to deny everything. But fear seeped into every fiber of his being, destroying the ego he had built up his entire life. His nights were haunted by dreams where Lila watched him, motionless and silent, while the world around him crumbled into flames and shifting shadows. He now stood on the edge of an inner abyss. The pride and arrogance that had guided his entire life were shattering under the weight of fear and humiliation. Alexander understood that to survive tomorrow, he had to change, or disappear. The prophecy was no longer just a warning, it was a mirror of his own soul, and the only person capable of saving him was the one he had dared to defy. The fateful day had finally arrived. Manhattan, bathed in a gray and oppressive light, seemed to hold its breath. Alexander Morgan, trembling, stepped out of the taxi in front of Central Park. Each step pounded in his chest like a drum announcing judgment. Lila Harper stood there, motionless among the trees, her green eyes piercing the air like blades. She made no move, spoke no words. But her mere presence was enough to shatter the last vestige of Alexander's pride. "You thought you could laugh at fate?" she finally asked, her voice calm but full of authority. Alexander fell to his knees, unable to meet her gaze. His heart was pounding wildly. "Please. I'll do anything. I'll give you everything I have." His voice trembled, choked by fear and despair. For the first time, he saw the consequences of his actions, the extent of his arrogance and his contempt for those he believed to be inferior. Every humiliation inflicted, every cruel decision, every scornful smile, all came back to him with a devouring intensity. Lila Harper stepped forward, slowly, but didn't hit him, didn't humiliate him further. She stopped right in front of him and stared at him for a long time, as if to make sure he understood. Then, in a whisper, she murmured, "You understand now." At that moment, Alexander felt an immense weight lift. The fear that had consumed him transformed into humility. He understood that his survival no longer depended on his wealth or power, but on his ability to change, to respect, and to recognize the humanity of others. The millionaire slowly rose to his feet. He was no longer the same man. The confrontation with Lila Harper had shattered his arrogance and awakened a conscience he had always been unaware of. The prophecy had been a necessary shock, a mirror to his soul. Alexander Morgan left Central Park that day with a new perspective on life. Lila Harper, silent, disappeared as she had appeared, leaving behind a breath of mystery, and a transformed man, ready to rebuild his life on the foundations of humility and compassion.